Welcome to my video talking about Frank Gorshin. Frank Gorshin is the original actor to play the Riddler. He played the Riddler in the 60s Batman television show, as well as in Batman the movie and the Special Legends of the Superheroes. Uh, the Riddler was a villain that was created in the comics, but actually before the TV show, Riddler had only appeared a few times. Like Joker, he was of course already Batman's arch enemy, and Penguin and Riddler had already appeared. I'm sorry, not Penguin and Riddler. Penguin and Catwoman had already appeared a bunch of times. So Joker, Penguin, Catwoman, those were already all major Batman villains. But Riddler was actually not necessarily considered to be one of the big Batman villains. He had only appeared a couple of times, and one of the comics the Riddler was in just happened to be one of the comics that I think that William Dozier, the creator of the show, got as research. So Riddler was kind of just chosen kind of arbitrarily, kind of randomly to be in the show. But Frank Gorshin gave such a great scene-stealing performance as the Riddler that the Riddler exploded into popularity almost immediately. Like, Riddler appeared in several episodes and became one of the four main villains of the show and the movie. So I feel like Frank Gorshin deserves so much credit for making the Riddler a superstar villain, because before then, in the comics, only appeared a few times, and of course he was cool in them, but he could have been just considered like, oh, this, sort of silly gimmick villain and quickly forgotten and not one of the big villains. But because of Frank Gorshin's amazing performance, where he was so funny, wild, and was able to form this sort of personal vendetta against Batman and make the stakes higher, he did such a great job that Riddler became one of the big main villains that people thought of when they think of Batman villains. And that might have never happened if it wasn't for Frank Gorshin. He did such a great job and really was one of the funniest, most entertaining villains in a TV show in general. He was just an absolute delight with his wild energy that could rival a lot of cartoon characters in terms of wild energy. He was amazing and just a scene-stealing delight. He played the Riddler in several episodes of the first season. He and the movie, and also performed this really catchy Riddler song. He decided not to come back for the second season, so they had John Aston, Gomez Addams from the Addams Family, as the Riddler, and he was definitely good. Of course, John Aston was wonderful in the Addams Family, but Frank Gorshin just was the definitive Riddler, so it was weird not having him. But thankfully, in the third season, they did. Frank Gorshin decided to come back one more time, and then he came back one more time again for the 1979 Legends of the Superheroes TV special, which had the Riddler with the Legion of Doom, and that was awesome. And so Frank Gorshin as the Riddler, one of the biggest scene-stealing villains of all time, one of the most entertaining villains of all time. His performance is definitely unmatched. He is the definitive Riddler. For me, Riddler and Frank Gorshin are synonymous with each other. Riddler, one of my favorite villains of all time, and it is because of Frank Gorshin. He is that awesome and that amazing. Now, the last time he played the Riddler was in 1979, but it was not his last time being in the Batman franchise, because in 2004 there was this new Batman cartoon show. It did have Adam West as Mayor Grange, and Adam West wasn't the only cast member from the 60s show to appear in it. Frank Gorshin appeared as this character, Professor Hugo Strange. Hugo Strange was a villain that's actually been around since 1940. Not as well known as other Batman villains, but one of the most fascinating villains and a really underrated character. And Frank Gorshin, got to play another Batman villain, and that was awesome. And sadly, Frank Gorshin did pass away before the show was finished, so he voiced Hugo Strange in his first 3 appearances in the show, and sadly, they did have to recast the role. But Frank Gorshin proved that, like when he was cast as another Batman villain, you think like, oh, he's probably gonna, do something similar to the Riddler. But no, Frank Gorshin is such a versatile performer that he gave Hugo Strange this super intimidating voice. Like, Hugo Strange is this guy in a suit, and yet he was arguably the most intimidating villain on the show, more so than, or at least right up there with the Joker. Like, he was just menacing and intimidating and had this really strong presence, and it was this unique performance that was great in its own right. So I think that goes to show what a great performer Frank Gorshin is. One of the very, very best. One of the best actors of his generation. Certainly one of the most enjoyable and fun to watch. And the Riddler wouldn't be nearly as awesome without him. The Riddler might have faded into obscurity and might have been considered like a D-list random goofy villain that nobody cares about if it wasn't for Frank Gorshin making him so amazing and putting so much effort and passion into the role. And so Frank Gorshin, his amazingness, his scene-stealing elegance, it continues to be an absolute joy to watch, and I can't, he's just amazing. Just love Frank Gorshin.